In 1892, a man in Cincinnati could walk into his shop before sunrise and have a finished, watertight barrel ready for a customer before noon. He'd done it 10,000 times. His father taught him, his father's father taught him before that. Number 3 on this list involves a trade so completely gone from American memory that most people who first hear about it assume it was never real. And number 8 involves a two-man team that cut every plank in every American building by hand, with one man working blind in a pit dug into the ground. These weren't side skills, they were the technical core of a civilization that could build and repair itself without asking anyone's permission. Before we begin, subscribe to this channel because what your great-grandfather could do with his hands by the age of 16 would stop most modern tradesmen cold. Number 8. The men who turned living trees into boards with nothing but a long saw and a pit dug into the earth. Before water-powered sawmills became widespread, every plank in every American building was cut by a two-man team called pit sawyers. One man stood above the log on a raised wooden platform. The other stood below in a pit, pulling the saw downward on each stroke while the man above guided the cut. The man in the pit worked blind, with sawdust falling on him with every pass. A skilled team could produce roughly 100 board feet of usable lumber per day. A modern sawmill produces that in under a minute. These teams were common across early America well into the 1800s. By the time the steam-powered circular saw spread after 1850, the trade was finished. The platform and the pit survive at a handful of living history museums. Nobody living has spent a career doing the work. Number 7. The woodworkers who built Windsor chair parts alone in the forest for entire seasons, using a technique that turned the natural weakness of green wood into its greatest structural asset. These craftsmen were called bodgers, and they ran foot-powered pole lathes set up beside freshly felled timber. Green wood turns easily on a lathe, but shrinks as it dries. The bodger built that movement into the design. His turned legs, still wet, were fitted into holes drilled slightly smaller in a seat made from dry, stable wood. As the wet legs dried, the dry seat gripped from outside, locking the joint tighter over time without glue or any fastener. Modern woodworkers who try to replicate this without understanding the moisture relationship between the parts produce chairs that look correct on delivery and fail within a few years. The knowledge wasn't recorded in any manual. It transferred through years of standing beside someone who already carried it. Number 6. The plasterers who finished every interior wall in America for 300 years using a 3-coat system that hasn't been taught in a trade school since the 1970s. Traditional lime plaster went on in layers over narrow wooden strips nailed across the wall framing. The first coat mixed animal hair for tensile strength and was pushed hard into the gaps so it locked in place as it dried. The second coat leveled the surface. The third was a fine finish, sometimes mixed with marble dust, for a hard, paintable result. The whole system took weeks to cure and couldn't be rushed without cracking. A skilled plasterer could read a wall by touch, feeling for hollow pockets invisible to the eye until the plaster failed. Modern drywall replaced this system almost entirely by the mid-1960s. The 3-coat process and its tools are now essentially out of commercial production. The ability to read a wall by touch went with the last generation. Number 5. The dry stone wallers who built hundreds of thousands of miles of field boundaries across rural America without a single bag of mortar, and whose walls have outlasted most of what replaced them. Dry stone walling looks like stacking rocks. It isn't. A properly built dry stone wall leans slightly inward as it rises, improving stability against frost and soil movement. The interior core is packed with smaller stones to prevent the faces from collapsing. Flat stones spanning the full width at regular intervals tie both faces together. A top course set at a specific angle sheds water and resists frost heave. A wall built correctly to those principles has stood for 2 centuries and will stand for 2 more. One built without that knowledge fails within a decade. Thousands of miles of mortared walls built in the same era and in the same fields are long gone. The dry stone walls beside them are still standing. Stop for a second on what these first 5 items have in common. Not one of these trades died because it produced inferior results. Bodger-built Windsor chairs didn't fail faster than factory chairs. Dry stone walls didn't crumble faster than mortared walls. Traditional lime plaster managed moisture better than drywall does today. The industrial system didn't replace these trades by building something better. It replaced them by producing something cheaper, and fast enough that the training pipelines for the old trades shut down before anyone stopped to ask what was being lost. Once the apprenticeships ended, the knowledge stopped moving. Within a generation, most of it was gone completely. Not stored somewhere, waiting to be recovered. Gone. And what replaced it was a dependency on systems the individual had no part in building or controlling. Number 4. The bark tanners who converted raw animal hides into leather over more than a year, using a process that couldn't be rushed without destroying the finished material. Bark tanning used ground oak bark, steeped in water, to produce a liquid rich in tannins, which combined chemically with the proteins in the hide and made the material stable, flexible, and resistant to decay. The hide moved through progressively stronger liquor over many months. The tanner periodically cut a thin sliver from the edge and read the cross-section by eye and touch to judge how far the conversion had penetrated. Rushing any stage produced leather that cracked or failed years ahead of schedule. Chrome tanning, developed commercially in the 1880s and 1990s, reduced the process to roughly a single day. The last bark tanneries in America closed during the mid-20th century. The ability to read a hide through each stage of conversion by sight and touch stopped transferring when they did. Number 3. The horn workers who turned cattle horns into nearly every small manufactured object in American daily life before plastic existed, and who practiced a trade so completely erased from national memory that most people who first hear about it assume it was never real. Horn working began with cattle horns softened in boiling water until pliable, then split, pressed flat under weighted frames, and allowed to cool into translucent sheets. Those sheets could be cut, heated locally, and pressed into forms to produce objects with the workability we now associate with early plastics. From those sheets, a skilled horn worker produced combs, buttons, spectacle frames, knife handles, spoon bowls, drinking vessels, and the translucent panes used in hanging lanterns before glass became cheap enough for that purpose. Cattle horn is naturally bacteriostatic, meaning bacteria don't thrive on its surface, which made horn combs hygienically superior to wooden ones. The trade required specialized presses and heated forms, most of which were discarded when celluloid replaced horn, beginning in the 1880s. Today, the full sequence of traditional horn working is practiced by very few craftspeople anywhere in the world. Most Americans have handled objects descended from this tradition without knowing the tradition existed. Number 2. The blacksmiths, who didn't just shoe horses, but built, repaired, and invented every iron object their community needed, and whose shop was the physical foundation on which every other trade on this list depended. A village blacksmith wasn't a specialist. He was the person who made and maintained the tools every other craftsman relied on. He made the long frame saw the pit sawyer used to cut lumber. He shaped the iron tires the wheelwright fitted to wagon wheels. He forged the shears the bark tanner used, and the draw knives the bodger used to shape chair parts in the forest. The blacksmith wasn't one trade among equals. He was the trade that maintained all the other trades. When a smithy closed in a small American town, the community lost its capacity for self-repair in a single stroke. Modern metal fabrication requires electricity, specialized machinery, and supply chains that stretch across continents. The village blacksmith required a fire, an anvil, and the knowledge of how to use them. The last generation who held the full breadth of that trade finished their working lives between roughly 1940 and 1960. Nothing replaced what they did. The need didn't disappear. Number 1. What every trade on this list actually has in common, and why it matters more than nostalgia. Every trade here died the same way, not by decree, not by a single event. It died because the last person who held the complete knowledge stopped working, and there was nobody standing next to him who had been there long enough to absorb what he knew. Apprenticeship wasn't a custom. It was the only transfer system that worked for knowledge this physical and this complex. You can't learn to read a hide through each stage of tanning from a textbook. You can't learn to feel the moisture content of green wood from an online course. These skills required years of proximity to someone who already had them. And the economic system that displaced these trades had no use for that kind of transfer. So the pipelines closed, the knowledge stopped moving, and within a generation, most of it was gone completely enough that the culture stopped noticing it was missing. The trades on this list weren't hobbies. They were the technical capability of a civilization that could build and repair and sustain itself without depending on systems it didn't control. That civilization existed in America until roughly the middle of the 20th century. It doesn't exist today. Find one object in your house this week that you couldn't repair if it broke, and that your great-grandfather would have fixed in an afternoon. A leather belt, a wooden chair, a pair of boots. Then look up whether anyone within a reasonable drive of where you live still knows how to do that repair the way it was built to be done. In most parts of America, that search is going to come up empty. That gap between what was common knowledge in every American town 100 years ago and what almost nobody carries today is the actual measure of what we lost when these trades died. If this changed the way you think about the skills that used to live in ordinary hands, share it with someone who needs to hear it.